of an incident day today, or at least in Porua, with suggestion that whether or not the new government's policy to be tough on gangs and the policing intent by Commissioner Costa, who said he understood what the new incoming government was going to be doing on that, will play out in reality. Yesterday was not a good day for the police minister, Mark Mitchell, but maybe that's because he was just being honest. There is part of the coalition agreement, we all know about it, to put on or to recruit an additional 500. Now, my understanding of reading the coalition agreement, I'll be interested to talk to Chris Cahill in a moment from the New Zealand Police Association on this issue, but my understanding of reading that is that it's 500 in addition to the sworn police numbers that they inherit. So it's not, we'll just go and get an extra 500 police. It's you're going to need more police than that, it would appear to me, because you'll have people who naturally retire as attrition, I guess, over that time, two-year period. There'll be people who just, leave and go, resign and stuff like that. So to get to that 500, my understanding, and I'll go and talk to Chris about this in just a second, is it's going to have to be 500 more than the police numbers, I guess, on the day of the coalition agreement. Joining us to talk about this and why there might be and there's a suggestion this morning that physical education tests are too stringent, and that's one of the reasons why we're simply not getting people joining or staying, is the president of the New Zealand Police Association, Chris Cahill, and he joins us now. Chris, thank you very much for joining us. You would have seen yesterday with some interest. What's your understanding of the coalition agreement? It's 500 in addition to what?
Yeah, good morning, Michael. Thanks for having us on. Yeah, look, having spoken to the minister, I mean, he's clear. It's 500 extra, and that's great. So what that means is if we have, and roughly every year, 450 to 500 officers leave through retirement or they just resign or for any number of reasons. So to stay even, we need to recruit about 500 a year, roughly. Yeah. So to get extra, that means we'd have to recruit 750 each year. Otherwise, we wouldn't be getting extra. The only concern I have around that is that the coalition agreement doesn't say extra, it says new. So you could technically say anyone joining is a new officer. The only reason I raise that is that halfway through the last term of the last government, they celebrated getting 1,800 new officers and were saying they'd reached their goal when it was extra. Now, in saying that, they kept going on till they had the extra, but I just don't want to have that debate in 2 years' time when it suddenly gets changed to new.
No, and neither do we. And you're absolutely right to raise it, Chris, and I think the understanding of the average New Zealander is that they are going to be 500 in addition to whatever the sworn police staff was on the day of the coalition agreement.
Yeah. And I think everyone expects that, and that's great if that happens. And it will be hard. I get it's going to be difficult, but as long as we're clear on that. And look, I don't want to sound miserable and ungrateful either. I make the acknowledgement that Winston Peters and New Zealand First have supplied New Zealand with extra police numbers nearly every time they've been in government. They've given more police numbers than anyone else. I think we had John Banks gave us 800 once, I think, 800 or 900, but Winston's done a lot more than that. And I certainly don't want to be, sound miserable over that.
No, and listen, I think you'll probably hold their feet to the fire on that one as well, because it is a central tenet of what New Zealand First we've talked about this prior to the election, Chris. All right, mate, one of the things, though, that you have raised today, and has been raised publicly as well, is that the compulsory fitness test that police recruits are required to undertake, presumably before they become recruits, but also those after you've become recruited and you've passed out of Porura Police College, is too hard. Is that right?
Well, it certainly has challenges at different times. So before you join, you basically have to meet a number of requirements. It's around running, it's around the vertical jump, push-ups, a grip test, things like that. You get a number of points. We think that works okay. I mean, there's obviously some demographics that find it a lot harder than others. And, when you're struggling to recruit, you want to make sure you're not excluding people that could be good officers simply on technical points. But in general, you can train up and get that. Once you're in the police, you have to do what's known as a physical competency test. And that's a much more complex test where it's almost an obstacle course with a set time frame. You're carrying a tyre, you're pushing a trailer, you're jumping through windows, you're dragging bodies, that sort of thing. The challenge that can present for people in the police is as you get older and you suffer injuries, long-term injuries, that can become more difficult to achieve. And sometimes you don't need to do any of that because you're doing a more sedentary job. It's getting that mix right. And I'll be first to acknowledge our members are very mixed on this. Some think that it's ridiculous that you want someone who's desk-bound at 55 years old to do that test. Others think, no, you've got to be fit to get on the street at any time. And it's just getting that balance right, that we're not losing people for technical reasons.
I've always had a problem going back from when I was in Parliament with police recruitment, and I wonder if you could take me through this, Chris. I don't understand when you need specialists in, say, fraud, IT, harm, public education, a whole range of particular jobs that don't require any physicality at all, but require acuity, mental acuity and intellectual and reasoning skills. Why you'd need to pass the test in the first place. I mean, if I need a computer boffin to come and help me, and as I'm sure you'd appreciate in these modern days and these modern crimes, why do I need to be able to scale a wall that's 2 metres high?
Yeah, the challenge is when different operations happen and you need to resource people and you don't have people with the necessary skills or ability.
Are you thinking about, for example, moving all those people off the Parliament forecourt?
Exactly. That's the most recent example where people had to come out of the back room and be able to deploy. And there were some clearly health and safety things identified with lack of training. So that's where you've got to get that mix right. And saying that, we've identified, I mean, a number, that's where there was a bit of a dispute of the 1,800 extra police that we got. 250 of those were authorised officers, so not with fully sworn PAS, but they were specialist investigators, a lot of them, so they went into asset recovery and groups like that. So you just got to get the balance right, but you've got to be really careful that you don't end up with a police force that can't mobilise when they have to. I mean, heavens forbid we'd ever have a situation like the Springbok tour again in New Zealand. I'd certainly hope we never would, but that had every person on deck, and you don't want to be caught short.
I'm a bit more pessimistic than you. I think that's entirely possible. You could get that level of civil disorder in the next decade. But moving on. So I understand the rationale. I do. But I also look at the police today, Chris. Listen, you've heard this 1,000 times, mate. I can't imagine you haven't. You're probably sick of it when your relatives get together for a family occasion or you're down at the pub or your rugby club or something like that. Police don't seem as physically imposing these days, Chris, as they used to.
Yeah, it's a fact, but the reality is they bring other skills as well, and the world's changed as well. I mean, I don't think anyone wants to see big burly police officers fighting with people on the ground anymore. They want to see.
I could handle it if they're on the ground with a mongrel mob or something like that, Chris. Got to be honest with you.
Well, one of the advantages now we have things like pepper spray and tasers, and also that's when most of the officers got injured, were in those physical altercations. So there's different ways of dealing with things, but it is a challenge. I mean, without a doubt, you've got 20 big, bulky gang members, and you've got smaller officers, but it doesn't look as imposing. But that's a matter of training and utilising your different tactical options better. And then, of course, there's other skills that those people bring. And I mean, we've got a much more diverse police force, and I think it's better for it. We've got a lot more women in the police now. We've got a lot better ethnic mix. And so, for instance, if you're going to turn up at a volatile situation involving a large number of Pacific Islanders, and every officer's a white male, but now we can turn up with a good mixture of Polynesian officers, female Polynesian officers, things like that, there's probably a good chance you're going to be able to fuse the situation better. So there's pros and cons.
Do female police officers diffuse events more than male police officers?
I think they can initially certainly have a less confrontational approach. It depends who you're dealing with. I mean, there's also others that show no respect and see them as an easy target. It depends who you're dealing with. But it's certainly some of the macho response that a natural instinct is taken out of it straight away. But I think any workplace, we're the same as any workplace. That mix is what brings success. The mix of different approaches to things and the different thinking that people bring.
Okay, I've just got somebody here just texted me in saying the PC time increases by 2 seconds each year to take account of ageing. It's not that difficult. I was a cop for 13 years.
Yeah, look, a lot of it is, it's not difficult till it is. I mean, if you're
I suppose that's right.
The problem is it's all good till you suffer an injury.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it becomes a massive stressor on your life, especially as you get older. I mean, I know I worked with an officer who got injured doing the PCT, took him about a year to recuperate. He then, doing the PCT a year later, had a massive knee injury jumping off the wall. And it became career-ending for him. And if you've never been through that, you think the PCT is easy. But once you've had that sort of thing happen to you, it becomes a real stressor. Also, you've got, and this is being generalistic here, but you've got women that go away, they have 2 or 3 kids, their body changes, different things change. It becomes harder than when they were young women. So it's you just got to factor all that in. But generally, it is still a fair test, and I certainly know a lot of our members are very strong on the value of it and that it should be retained as it is.